And we're wrapping up the 14th chapter of The Pearl of the Soul of the World. Ariel took on the pearl, consummated her marriage, and now Ravenna is saying that it is time for her, Ariel, to take her place as the ruler of that world. And Ariel is not happy about that. The stuff of all the world, the voice within her said. These are my gaming beads. Return to New Ravenna, wearing the crown of my heir, and I will teach you the juggling of them, the spinning and weaving of their strands. You will become a mighty sorceress, Ariel. The pale girl sat gazing at the sleeping prince beside her. She shook her head. I don't want your sorcery, she whispered. I want to remain with Irilaf. The pearl stuff in her blood began to simmer and seethe. Once again, the images of the encroaching entropy flooded her mind. You must leave him, the ancient's voice persisted. The task awaiting you brooks no distraction. You will be far too busy in New Ravenna for such mundane cares. Ariel leaned back and longed to weep. Her eyes stung, but no tears would fall. Despair overwhelmed her. Undeniably, as the chain, everything Ravenna within told her was true. Child, you are not mortal anymore. Irilaf deserves a bride who will age with him. The ancient's words were full of compassion and sorrow, but some stubborn part of Ariel refused to give in. I am his bride, she whispered. You drank your wedding toast to a half-dark angel in Averick, Ravenna within her answered gently, one who meant to kill you in the next hour, but you overcame him with the help of Talb the mage. The one you wed no longer exists. Irilaf's a man again. The dark angel is no more. He lives, cried Ariel. My own heart beats within his breast. Because his heart was plucked from him unawares, while he lay helpless beneath the mage's spell. Don't you see, child, Irilaf is bound to you whether he would or no. Did you not once yourself hear him say he would turn to Saber if only he were free? No, Ariel whispered, resisting still. He would not. It's me he loves now. But the words trailed away. Doubt gnawed at her, gazing at Irilaf. She began to fear all of his late passion. All his love were but the outcome of a stolen heart, and Talb the mage's spell. Ariel groaned. But he is my husband. He's mine. Are you like the witch, then, devoid of true love? Do you want only to possess him? No! The misery that gripped her was almost unbearable. Then set him free. Silence. Come, Ravenna's voice reasoned. You have freed the wraiths that were the Dark Angel's bride, and my lawns that have been made into gargoyles. You have freed the world from my daughter's power. Will you not give Irilaf his freedom now? Ariel sat shaking, frozen. Ravenna's exhortation filled her with terror. If she gave Irilaf back his heart, would he be lost to her? She could not bear the thought. And yet, now that the seed of suspicion was planted, it seemed she could do nothing to check its growth. Cold certainty crystallized in her. Once freed, she would choose Saber. The fine chain chafed against her will. The pearl stuff in her blood waited, whispering. Her gaze fell upon the white gown into which she had awakened in New Ravenna. I know now. What is the fabric of this garment you gave me, she said. It felt unspeakably heavy, a great burden in her hand. She did not wish to don it again. Duty. Sacrifice. One of the panels of the tiny pavilion was very slightly agape, where 2 layers of the wedding sari did not quite overlap. Ariel gazed out through the crack into the night beyond. The rain had long since ceased, the mist beginning to blow away. The star-strewn vault of heaven peered darkly through the gray-white wisps of cloud. If you lose much, think what you and the world will gain. The others have lost still more. Consider all my former might, reduced now to a scatter of fire beads on the wind and a murmur in your blood. Ariel's gaze returned to Irilaf. This task you would hand me will stretch far beyond the life of any mortal man. Doubtless, and time presses even more now. My sorcery scatters wider with each passing hour. You must gather it, and soon. The pale girl laughed painfully. What could that matter without Irlath? She thought of the task stretching before her, uncountably vast, and herself going companionless through all the years. Loneliness nearly overwhelmed her. Even the ancient Lady Ravenna had Melchior. Heavily she sighed. Must I never see Irlath again? The ancient's voice was full of regret. I fear not. Have you forgot? Irlath belongs to the Averclon. Ariel sat upright with a jolt. Memory filled of her pact she had struck with the newly awakened Starhorse and Istrinus, a truce between them and the winged warhorse for his steed until the witch was overthrown. Ariel bit back a gasp. She had forgotten that pact. Put it wholly from her mind until this moment. All debate would prove meaningless if the Starhorse demanded the prince's death in payment for his own. I built my lawns to be just, not merciful, the ancient voice within her sadly said. In truth, it was this I meant to spare you when I warned you away in haste. The pale girl's hand upon her sleeping husband tightened. No, she whispered, tell me what I must do. To save him, she meant, but the pearl stuff in her blood spoke before she could finish the thought. We have come to the rhyme's end, child. I can only advise, I cannot compel. The choice lies before you, Irlath or the world. Choose. Ariel struggled, fighting for breath. It was hard to speak, the words hurt so. At last she whispered, if I must give up Irlath to the vengeance of the Averclon and let him at least go as his own, then let him at least go as his own man, free. Her hand shook, but she felt the pearl stuff within her steady. It sheathed upon the prince's sash. The blade adamantine glimmered. Ariel reached to pull it free, laying her hand on Irlath's breast. She drew the white gleaming edge down the center of his breastbone and found her own living heart beneath. Placed there 12 months past, upon their marriage night, lost in sleep, the young man never stirred. The edge adamant held no sting. Turning the blade to her own breast, she delved and found Irlath's beating heart, which she had worn these last 2 years. The pearl stuff pervaded her, sustaining her. No blood spilled from the bright blade's keen and burning edge. She felt only warmth hot as white Solstar. Taking her own heart from Irlath's breast, she returned his to its place. With a motion of her hand, she closed the flesh. Then she set her own heart back in her breast and sealed the breach. No mark or scar betrayed what she had done. Already, she murmured to Ravenna within, you have made me a sorceress. Adamantine glowed bright within a strain. Adamantine glowed bright without a stain, throwing shadows through the little pavilion. One lay now across Irlath's face. Ariel cast no shadow any more. Unable even to weep, she turned and set the blade back in its sheath. Voices sounded in the distance outside the pavilion. Ariel lifted her head, listening. The prince beside her murmured, shifted, stirred. The voices sounded close, clearer now. Survivors, surely, a young man's voice. It sounded like her own brother, Rashka's. By all the underpaths, another cried. One Ariel had not heard in far too long, taubed the mage. Let it be they. The fabric of the pavilion can only be hers. Hello, hello! Irlath beside her sat up with a start. Hurriedly, she reached for Ravenna's gown, but her husband caught her hand and brought it to his lips. Without a thought, she caressed his cheek. Then she remembered he did not belong to her anymore and froze. Other voices hailed them from without. Ariel heard the high, ululating thrill that was the greeting cry of the desert wanderers. The prince's head turned in surprise. Someone comes, he murmured. Sick at heart, Ariel pulled free of him and turned away. His touch was torture to her now. She could not bear to look into his eyes, to see his feelings change as soon as he realized his heart was once again his own. She donned the ancient's weighty gown. Beside her, the prince caught up his own garments. As he knotted the sash about his waist, he reached to draw her to him again. Ariel shrank from him, shaking. She rose to fold the flap of their tent aside and step out to meet the ones who came. And that is the end of chapter 15.